So welcome to my channel. That's what we call the good life. Now today I'm going to be talking about all the jobs you can be doing in the month of May on your allotment or in your home garden. And May is one of the busiest months in the gardening calendar. It can be quite easy to get overwhelmed of what you can and what you can't do and what you should do first. Now I just want to give a big shout out to all my new subscribers, because the last video I put out and we got lots and lots of views and lots of new subscribers. So I just wanted to say welcome, and I hope you enjoy the journey on my channel. So let's start talking about the things you can be doing on your allotment. Now one of the things I'm going to be doing, it's not a very glamorous job, but the top part of my allotment is a little bit untidy. So my job over the bank holiday weekend is going to be to tidy up, hopefully the composters, to do a little bit of mowing and strimming, and to generally make this a little bit prettier. So now I've said it on camera, I'm going to have to do it. So on my next video you can see that I've done it to make myself accountable. Now let's move down and we can look and see some of the jobs I've done and some of the jobs that you can be doing too. So if we move down, first of all you've got the rhubarb. That's something you can be harvesting now. A lot of people ask when can I harvest it? As soon as you've got plenty of leaves. You know, there's no hard and fast rules of size. I wouldn't go harvesting it if the leaves were really small. So that's a job you can be doing. You can be harvesting some rhubarb. If you've got something coming through like a long shoot or a bloom, and we will put a picture up on the screen now, if you've got something like that, you must cut it right down to the bottom. So as when you harvest a piece of rhubarb, you pull it out. If you had the one with a bloom on it, you would cut it right down to the bottom there. If you've never harvested rhubarb before, you do literally pull it out from its entirety. You pull it out of the socket, so you almost pull and almost give it a twist as you take it out, and you don't cut it. So if you've got a bloom and it's going to seed, you do cut that out. If you're harvesting your rhubarb, you pull it out from the socket, you take the whole bit out. I hope that's clear to everybody, because it's completely different ways of doing it. So again, you take it completely out if you're harvesting. So we'll leave those bits there, and I'll harvest a little bit more myself. As you can see, I have got a lot of tidying up. This top bit has really gotten a little bit out of control. It was fine a few weeks ago, but with all the rain we've had, you know, it's just gone absolutely bananas, and I'm sure you're in the same position too. So don't be disheartened if things have got a little bit out of control, because it's happening to me too. So one thing I've done is I've got all my potatoes in, and some of them have actually started to peek through. So I've just started to mulch or earth up, whatever you want to call it. There's a whole host of things that you can mulch with. You can just earth up with the earth that's in and around the plot, or like me, I had some well rotted manure that we've put over. Another really easy and free thing to use is grass clippings. I've used grass clippings loads of times and it works really well, and I believe that some people use straw, but I've not used it myself. I've only ever earthed up, mulched with that, or compost off my composter, or grass clippings, all of which are perfectly okay, and they all work really well. So the other thing that I'm doing, and I've had to kind of do it really quickly, is covering things up. There's not a lot out there for the birds to eat, and if there is, they seem to want the things that are on our plot. So I have been covering a few things, my gooseberries in particular. So I've got some gooseberries down at the bottom there, and I've got some at the top. It's really important that you cover them, because honestly you wouldn't think they would be after them when they're so tart and really quite small, but I actually had quite a lot knocked off the other day, and you could see where the birds had landed on the top and bashed it down. So if you've got gooseberries, you definitely want to be covering those. As with seeds, I started some seeds off recently, and I always cover those to start off with, because there's all sorts of different birds or little mammals and things like that that quite often will nibble at them if you don't get them covered. So that's really handy to cover your seeds. And if you've not already got any of the scaffolding netting, it's really cheap. You get a really big roll of it, and I use it for lots. As you can see, I've got it there, I've got it over the polytunnel, I've got it covering my onions. It's a really cheap and versatile way of covering things to keep things like birds and other animals off. I'll put a link up on the screen, and I will put one in the description, and I am asked to tell you by Amazon that I do make a little tiny bit out of it were you to make a purchase. As we move on, I've started off some other seeds. So I've got some various seeds under there. But under here I've got carrot, and I always cover it with Enviromesh because of the carrot fly. Quite often they can get really badly affected, so again I'll cover it anyway to protect it from the birds, but I use different netting. It is much more expensive, but it really does do the job, and you buy one bit and it lasts for absolutely donkey's years. There are a couple of holes in it, but it really doesn't matter for the purposes of keeping carrot fly off, because carrot fly across the bottom, so this will do what I need it to do. Again, another really useful thing to have. Since I've been using Enviromesh, I've had such better carrots with barely any carrot fly. So we will put a link up there, and we will also put one in the description if you'd like to get some for yourself. But it's a really useful thing to have. So we can hear the birds singing, which is absolutely lovely. I've seen an awful lot of people planting their brassicas and their courgettes and their squashes and their pumpkins out. It's all down to personal choice, but I personally haven't put any of mine out yet, just purely because it is a little bit too early and I'm not prepared to take the risk. And when I do put them out, I'll only put a few out at a time. I won't rush them all out in case we suddenly get a cold night or something decides to go and eat them. I'll probably be starting to put those things out in a couple of weeks' time, but I do need to harden them off, and I haven't done that yet. We will be heading off back to my home garden, because that's where the greenhouse is, so I will be running through a few things that I've got there to give you some more detail about that. But we're just going to head off into the polytunnel now to check out my broad beans. So we're in the polytunnel, and I've got my broad beans in here, and as you can see, they're coming on absolutely fantastically, absolutely loads and loads of bloom. There are some little beans just starting to form down there, which is really positive. But something you do need to be looking out for at this time of the year is black fly. And broad beans are particularly susceptible. I've already seen some ants running up and down. Now that is to signify that there's probably a few black fly lurking around, and they feed off the sap. Sadly, they don't eat the black fly, if only. The ants don't really cause any trouble, it's the black fly that do. So the best thing to do is to nip the tops out, and nipping the tops out do a couple of things. It not only hopefully stops the black fly from taking hold, but it also concentrates the beans to start growing as well. So it's a really good thing to do, and you can, if you want to, actually eat these as well. So you just gently pinch them off, being really careful not to, you don't want to pinch the bloom out as well. So there we go, just gently pinch it out like so, being quite mindful not to pinch out. I'm sure some people are a bit more brutal than me, but I don't want to lose any lovely bloom. I don't know about anyone else. If anyone's done this better than me, then do let me know. But we just take out the tops, that's all we do, and then hopefully that will stop the black fly from taking hold. But I will still keep an eye, and if I see any, if you see any black fly on the leaves and things, just turn them over and just rub them off as best you can. I can't see any at the moment, but it is quite a good precautionary thing to take the tips out to stop that from happening. But I'm hopefully in the next few weeks I'll be harvesting these soon, but at the moment none of them are big enough for me to harvest at the moment, although I do know some people that do actually harvest them a little bit smaller. So I will finish this job off later, and let's head back home to the home garden for me to update you there. So we're now back in my home garden, so I'm going to be showing you some of the jobs I'm going to be doing in and around the home garden, and I'm also going to be doing a little bit of harvesting because there's a few things that are ready to pick now, believe it or not. Now one thing I forgot to mention, there's still plenty of digging, weeding and mulching to be done. The weeds have grown ridiculously over the last week or so, and they all seem like they've almost quadrupled in size, so there's still plenty of tidying up to be done, ready to get stuff planted in the ground. Now I've harvested a bit of rhubarb, and obviously the pea shoots I won't be wasting those. I'll either put them in the curry I'm going to be doing this evening, or I will put them in a salad. I'm actually going to be giving rhubarb curry a go this evening. Not sure I'm brave enough, but after mentioning it accidentally on my last YouTube video, I googled it and worked out that I actually can do a rhubarb curry. So I've got the rhubarb ready, although I don't think all of that's going to go into the curry. I shall probably make myself a crumble as well. So if we move over, I've still got plenty of spinach. It is starting to go to seed a little bit, but it's still good to put in things. So I'm still using it. So I'm still cutting a bit of this off and adding it to various stir fries and salads. I generally put the smaller stuff in the salad, so the little leaves like this. And the bigger leaves I stir fry and do other things. Obviously I cut them off, and you can still eat the stalks as well. I always go for the bright light variety, just because the stalks are more interesting, and I dice them up and saute them and do various things with them. I did a lovely peanut curry the other day, and that was really, really lovely. But yeah, like I say, you can cut the stalks off and use those too. If we head into the greenhouse here, we actually have some peas coming on there. These are early onward, so I can either cut them and eat them like Mange too, or I can wait for them to swell out and turn into actual peas, and that one's starting to swell out there. So it all depends whether I need them or not. So I've been doing a bit of a mixture of both. Some of them I've been cutting them off as they are, and some of them I've been letting them get a little bit bigger and swell out as well. So once they start to get a little bit bigger, they get a bit tougher, so you've got to let them swell out. But I have been eating quite a few of those. In fact, I'll take a few of those off to put in the curry that I'm going to do this evening. If you grow these things, you might as well eat them, mightn't you? Because what's the point otherwise? It's lovely to eat things that are completely fresh, just taken out of the garden. And the good thing is if you want to cut them a little bit smaller, you can do that. You know, you can just eat these and put them in salads and things like that. You don't have to let them get any bigger if you don't want to. I think I'm going to have that one. And I've also got some rocket as well over here. Again, wild rocket, again, another fantastic thing to have in the garden. If you've not ever sown wild rocket, some people moan about it because it keeps coming back, but that's one of the great things about it. It just self-sows itself every single year, and you've got rocket to have in various salads, sandwiches, you know, all sorts of things. You know, it's ridiculously easy and cheap to grow, and just like I say, just kind of self-seeds every year. So if you've not got it and you like rocket, the wild variety is by far the best one to get. So that's my little bit of harvesting done for the next few days. So something I wanted to talk about was hardening off. There's an awful lot of people that are losing their plants, and it's very easy to say, oh, just harden them off, but people don't know what that is. It does all depend where you live in the country. The temperatures can fluctuate an awful lot, and even in Kent you can lose stuff. I'm seeing an awful lot of pictures of people where their plants have died off, and they don't know whether it's something that's eaten them, and they don't know whether it's because of the weather, and it could very easily be a combination of the two. So my best advice is don't put everything all out in one go when you do start putting stuff out. And then obviously if something happens, you don't lose the whole lot in one go. But hardening them off is a really good idea. If you take a look inside my greenhouse, I've got loads and loads of stuff in here at the moment. You know, I've got various tomatoes, squashes, courgettes, I've got some flowers, I've got some Cape gooseberries, I've got some herbs, I've got beans, I've got some brassicas there, I've got some leeks, and what I'm gradually doing is putting them outside for a few hours a day. It's handy if you've got a clutch or something like that. I think one of the mistakes people make when they put them outside is they put them outside on a day when there's actually quite a strong breeze, and it's not the sun that causes the problem with them, it's the breeze, and it's quite cold and it's like a frost on them, and that's what can kill them. So if you put them out too early, if there's a bit of a breeze, that can be what does it. So having something like a cold frame, or this kind of like, it's a plastic cold frame, if there is anything like that, you've got a little bit of wind protection from it. You know, and what you can do is when you've got an awful lot of plants, it's all very easy saying take them out during the day, put them back in at night, or if you leave early for work, you can't do that. If you get back late, you can't do that. So to get something like a cold frame or one of these, I must admit mine is very tatting, but it does do the job. It just means that you haven't got to keep lifting them in, lifting them out, lifting them in, lifting them out. So if you forget to do it, you've got a little bit of protection. So even if it's just in that, you've got a bit of protection around it. Or you can just zip it up at night. So what I will start to do is you can leave them out for a bit during the day and then put them back. Or you can start putting a few bits out and then just zipping this up and then opening it up during the day to get some fresh air, because what you're trying to do is gently acclimatise them to the weather, and ideally it's going to start to warm up and we're not going to get any frosts, but there's no hard and fast rules. We're set to have in Kent some really mild days for the next few days, but then there's one that's going to drop down to 7. Or is it going to drop down to 7, or is it going to drop down more? So I personally always keep an eye on the Met Office, and so does my cameraman. So if I don't pick up on it, he does. It's a really handy app to have on your phone. if you've not already got it on there. So I've got to say that if you are getting any value out of this video, and we do something called Buy Me a Coffee, and there's a link up on the screen and there is one in the description. Now don't feel that you've got to buy me a coffee. If all you ever do is subscribe, like and comment, I will still be more than grateful. So the last couple of things I wanted to talk about is looking after your seedlings. I see a lot of people's seedlings dying off. Now, apart from obviously maybe putting them out and it being a bit too cold, by far probably the biggest reasons why people's seedlings die is something called damping off, which is often caused by overwatering. People often kill them with love by watering them a little bit too much. So I just wanted to kind of give you an example of when I would water and when I wouldn't. So that, even though it looks a little bit dry, it's still quite moist, and you literally have to feel it. If when you put your finger on it, it still feels moist, it doesn't need to be watered. Courgettes, squashes and cucumbers are particularly susceptible to being overwatered and that killing them off. That one, on the other hand, as you can see, is quite dry. Even that's not mega dry. If I really put my finger underneath it, I could still feel some moisture underneath, but you're waiting for it to be, you have to be quite brave. Obviously don't let them dry out and let them die, but don't keep overwatering them and letting them sit in puddles of water, because that's one of the things that causes them to die off. Something I've been doing to help with germination of certain things like French beans, broad beans, peas, I soak them. So what I do is I soak them overnight in water, I drain them off in a sieve, and then I put them between some wet tissue, and these have been on my windowsill, but they could just as easily be in my greenhouse. And as you can see, within a day or two they've started to sprout already. So the reason I do that is I get much better germination when I do that. Now I can do one of two things. I can either pop them into module trays and bring them on a little bit more, or I can just make little holes in the ground and just drop them in and direct sow them into the ground, because peas are not really frost hardy, but they're reasonably so. We're in May now, so if I popped those straight into the ground, they would be perfectly okay. So I've got two choices with those. I'll let them pop along a little bit more, because not all of them have sprouted, but they're nearly there, and that's literally only taken me a couple of days and makes all the difference. And with something like sweet corn, you can do a similar thing. I don't soak that overnight, I just put that between damp tissue. These are the little baby sweet corns that I'm growing, but as you can see already, I think they're just starting to pop out. Very early signs of it, but they're starting to sprout as well. But again, they need to be left for a little bit longer as well. Now I'm sure there's lots of other things you would like to sow. I've started off various seeds on the allotment and in module trays in my greenhouse, but for a full video of all the things you can be sowing in May, there is a link up on the screen, and there is also one in the description, so you can get the full SP on what you can sow now.